I've just entered our test system so that we can create records and edit things without fear of upsetting somebody else's good work.
Sure.
So just to recap, the test system, everybody should have an installation of E10 environment and E10 test system as well. So this just allows, it's designed for the users so that you can just log in and have a play without fear of ruining anything or editing anything that you shouldn't. All right. So I will just go through the menu structure. There's quite a bit of background noise at the moment, Reza, just on your speakers. Maybe if you just mute it. Yeah, cool. All right, just jump in if you have any questions as well. So let's talk about today about maintenance, which was sort of where your first question came from. So under the menu structure, under service management, there's project management, which you're quite familiar with. You've had the PMO trainings. So we'll jump across to the maintenance management area. So maintenance management is to do with typically our equipment, or what used to be known in Frankie Core as assets. So equipment are things that, or items that effectively require maintenance, or that we, for example, hire out to earn money and generate revenue for our business, or that we use in order to generate that revenue. For example, things like our lathe and other machines and toolings, and other TNT property, plant, or equipment, right? So these are all assets to the business, and effectively they then, a lot of them need maintenance on an ongoing basis, preventative maintenance or ad hoc maintenance, and that's what maintenance jobs are actually designed to do. So I'll go through the different scenarios of a maintenance job as we open it up and go through it. But first up, let's just have a look at what equipment looks like. So we'll just open up an equipment tracker, and we'll just sort of first talk about how we find equipment within Epicor.
I made a note here that if we take a copy of those calculators from that snapshot, you can use them as the maximum. So that's one how to go out.
All right, cool. So there's two places where you can go searching for equipment. One is through Equipment Tracker, using the tree structure here on the left, or if you already have the equipment ID, you can enter it straight into here. Using this method here is probably not the best, because we've got about 2,000 over equipment records in the system at the moment. So unless you can, you can always export this, for example, to Excel and do a search on it, but it's probably not the best methodology. The other way is just the equipment dashboard. So under maintenance management, dashboards and reports, right at the top here is dashboard for equipment. So you open that up, and again, this, if you just leave all of these empty and you click refresh, it literally retrieves all of our records in the system. You can then do some filters on the grids here. If I did that too quickly, effectively I just right mouse clicked on the title. You can do this anywhere in Epicor on any grid. You right mouse click on the title. You can apply filters. You can do summaries. So for example, so I just highlighted show summaries. Yeah. And there's no number fields here, but effectively summaries allows you to average, average, sum, and various other calculation type functions. So you can do that for example, to sum all the values in a column to give you a grand total at the bottom for costs or something similar to that. So that's just what that is. Filters here again, you can pick a specific category, for example, or you can do a custom one. So you can go equals,
It's almost the case for a bit of a,
you know, a certain number or a certain value. And then you can, you know, if it's a number value, for example, you can say, well, it's got to be greater than this value and less than this value. So this is quite a useful feature to filter your columns. The last feature of grid views in Epicor is this group by function. So for example, if you want to group by category, or let's group by geo control type first, you will see now that everything is grouped by these, and then you could, for example, say, well, I want to see all the equipment related to Typhoon 22 under this geo category, and then you can see those equipment underneath there. So it sort of helps to narrow down your search. So for example, if I take Mark Harris as an example, the assets team for hire tooling, this is really his area here, hire tooling TMT, as well as these ones which are client owned. So that's for Woodside, I believe. CT means client tooling. And then so he can go in here and he can filter to his heart's delight and find many different values. So a lot of these fields here are the same fields which you find exactly when you set up an equipment. So you can filter on various metadatas. So let's just talk about an equipment specifically. Let's bring an example up. So on the tree here, there's several different ways. You can sort by warehouse, which means it sorts by the equipment's location. You can sort by its category, which is just a high-level categorization of the equipment, or you can sort by geo-control type. Now, I'll just explain a little bit more what geo-control type means. Every single equipment has a geo-control type. The reason that's the case is when you do maintenance on that equipment, this control type actually points to the account, the financial account, where the costs go for that equipment, right? So we have the cost for our hire tooling go into a different account to the cost for our maintenance on, for example, the TMT Ute, right? Which is again different to the cost for LWI equipment. So if they do maintenance on that, it goes into a separate cost bucket. So you can use this as a way to, or as a way for finance to assign the costs. So you just pick the most appropriate type if you're creating a new equipment. You are not an equipment admin at the moment, but maybe one day if you have the need of it, then we'll train you up as an equipment admin. But effectively, the admins will pick the control type as part of that, and that's important because it's where the costs go effectively. So let's just have a quick look at each of these. So sorting by warehouse, for example, the first category is either customer owned or TMT owned. As you know, we do have customer owned equipment that we manage. The Woodside shed, for example, the Impex trolleys and the Shell trolleys, I think, as well, or the tooling. So there's various equipment that's client owned that we manage, we maintain for them, we send out to them when they need it. If, for example, we take TMT owned, we can, for example, see what is in the C building right now. So these are equipment which is sitting in the C building. So you can click on any one of these and you should be able to then retrieve its details. A bit slow this morning. And then you'll see that it's there in the C building and in the bin Serve 101. So that's obviously for survey. They've got some bins there. So let's just have a look at sort by category. That is something that I need to check out.
This is the best thing I've got out of our.
Okay, so let me close that.
And the funny thing was, she started, so looking like they were losing everything, I had to bring them up.
Sort by category. All right. Category. Let's have a look. So this, Mike Harris uses this quite often because he can go TNT owned, he can go higher tooling, and then now he can say, right, I'm looking for something that's a fluid injection tool. He knows it's in that category because he knows his equipment. So then now he's narrowed down to anything which is fluid injection. So these are the hot stabs, hydraulic hoses, yeah, mainly hot stabs and receptacles which are in here. So that's that example, and then sort by GL control. This one is, for example, used by LWI. So it's classified on the customer owned because it's actually owned by the joint venture. And we obviously, TNT does a lot of work for the joint venture. And for example, if we take the SID, then they have the subcategories, H4 connector, RV controller. So again, we can retrieve the details there like that. So I'll just talk about some of these fields here. So equipment ID, that's fairly, that's a key ID that you use to find an equipment. And you have the way to print labels and label the equipment physically. There's a status for the equipment, so the statuses could be operational, non-operational, being built, for example, things like that. It may have a FIC asset number, so you can reference back to our FIC asset database for any archival records. Description, parent, so there's parent-child relationships which are shown in the tree. So you can have any number of equipment as children to a given parent. Equipment category we've described. Equipment champion. So equipment champion is because our equipment is a little decentralized. We've got Mark who takes care of all the high tooling as well as the client tooling. We've got LWI who takes care of all the SID, the ICS, the AXE equipment. We've got Survey who have some of their equipment, and then we've got TNT owned equipment, right? So, you know, there's various owners like Chris Chow would manage, you know, a lot of the vernier calipers, you know, Wayne and Brad, or Jong rather is probably the champion for the workshop equipment, things like that. So equipment champion is the person who you should go to contact if you have any queries about this specific equipment. And every equipment, when it's generated new, an equipment champion must be set. So they must pick somebody from the list. So effectively, you can go and contact this person if you have any queries about this. And they are also equipment admins. Anyone who's equipment champion should also be equipment admin and allows them to update the equipment if there's anything missing. OEM. That's fairly self-explanatory. Serial numbers, again, most equipment, you know, reason you almost make it as equipment is it's quite important, right? Might have pressure testing certs. You need to maintain those. You need to do preventative maintenance, so might often have a serial number. Its branding or its model number. Geo-control type we've talked about. Labor interface is not really utilized in our system. Equipment can have a meterage, so as we're just working with Owen at the moment, and eventually RVs or certain pieces of the RVs, the child equipment, may have meterage recorded against it. So we're talking about hours, for example, hours of the RV operating. And once we can do that, we can actually start doing cool things in the future, like really looking at preventative maintenance data and seeing at what point in time and how many hours do certain things fail or start to fail or need replacement, and then you can actually start to predict and put in preventative maintenance tasks ahead of that time based on hour usage. So that's quite powerful, but underutilized at the moment. Service date, warranty date, if they're applicable for the equipment. Again, the TNT part number. Just noticed that the description is missing, so I just need to update that. But it might have been built by us and we converted it into equipment, and it might have a TNT part number reference. But again, it's an optional field. Warehouse and bin. So some of these are not all populated, especially from the bin perspective. They may just sit in the warehouse. We're still tidying up the logistics side of stuff, I guess, especially with our racking situation outside. And then the rest of these values down here are less used, but you can, for example, say that this is the supplier that typically supplies the parts for this equipment, and this is the supplier that typically services it if it's not us. Yeah. Now, fixed asset is something that finance is still working on, so a lot of it will be blank at the moment. But effectively, they've started off first with our laptops and our computers, creating fixed assets. So fixed asset is a financial term, meaning that they effectively put it on our books and they depreciate against it, right? So, all of our hire tooling, all of our property owned equipment, and not the client tooling, for example, should have fixed asset IDs in the future. Again, this is something you don't need to pay too much attention to, but it's just a bit of context for you. It's more financial and allows them to depreciate against it over the years. Ownership. So here you can see it's customer owned. It's either TMT owned, which both of these are not ticked. It can be customer owned. It can have a customer equipment ID, as well as our own ID, as well as a ship to location, or it can be vendor owned. Now, we don't have any vendor owned at the moment in the system, but that's for example, you're able to say that, if for example, we're hiring something from a hire company for quite a while, we may want to manage it and we may need to maintain it. So then we put it in our system, say that supplier owned, and manage it that way. And calibration is currently a module which we don't have activated in Epicor at the moment. It's additional licenses. So we would do calibration through maintenance jobs, but there is a whole calibration workflow, if you will, that you can purchase and buy in Epicor. So that's a bit of context for equipment. You can review maintenance plans on equipment here as well. There's additional free text fields such as specifications or comments. Again, you can review those. Equipment tracker is good because on any given piece of equipment, let's take a look if I can find something. I wonder if there's anything for this.
The great thing is you know if the app's really well, so the information's really good. Bad thing is you don't know how to better else.
Test system is quite slow. We need to give more. We'll grunt to it. Right, so on equipment tracker, for any given piece of equipment, you can go to the maintenance or job log, you click retrieve, and then you can see any job that has been raised against this equipment in the past. You can query that information, and you can retrieve costs there as well if you so wish. So you can see the maintenance history of a given piece of equipment. Just a bit of a shortcut thing for you here. Anywhere we see a bit of an ID, equipment ID, a purchase order, a job number, or part number even, you can right mouse click on that field in the list, go open with, and you can open it with job entry, for example, or job tracker to go and query additional information within the system. So you can pretty much right mouse click your way through the system as you navigate each record. So you might open this job, then you might query some purchase orders, you right mouse click open purchase orders, then you might query a part number, you right mouse click open a part number. So you can navigate your way through the system through this right mouse click menu. It just saves you going manually opening the menu and putting in the ID. Children, again, if it has children, you can click retrieve. Now just pick one which does have children. Hire tooling, whack offshore basket, children, retrieve, and you can see it's children there. And here's the movement log. So if there has been movements, I'll have to find one where it does have, but it will show it here. It will show the equipment that was moved, who it was changed by, what was the new warehouse and location it was changed to, and then it will record that. So it just gives a bit of a history of where the equipment has moved. It obviously doesn't always help in finding it, but at least you know the last place it was if for example, you need to chase it down. And then the last one is sparing. Again, this is in development, or well, it's been developed, but it's soon to be used by Owen's team, probably first up, maybe even Mark's team with the LWI. You're able to set pick part numbers and set them as spares for a given piece of equipment. You can set a spare status. For example, it might be a critical spare or might be an auxiliary spare. And its level of importance, I guess. So you can query spares here once we start really utilizing that in the system. But it's been built up for them, ready to go. So that's soon to be used, and it'll be especially effective offshore and in the equipment that we maintain and hire out. Right. So that's a little bit about equipment. Let's have a look at maintenance jobs. So just for context, we have, there's 4 types of jobs in Epicor. We only use 3. The 4th one is service jobs for things like field service. Again, we don't have a full service aspect of our business. For example, if we were an air conditioning business, we may go out and service air conditioning on client premises, things like that. But there may be some use for because there's some equipment which we do maintain for clients, which you could consider to be service. So that's just service jobs, but we're not currently using that. There's manufacturing jobs, which is what Malta runs and you run in the engineering department. There are maintenance jobs, which I'm just about to describe, and there are project jobs. So project jobs are the phase jobs that belong to a project phase, and you would have learned about that in the project management training. Cool. So maintenance job. So creating a new maintenance job, you effectively just go new job. Oh, yep, new job. Then this pops up. You just click next job. It will increment the job number automatically, and you press OK.
The thing that I wasn't clear on.
The next important thing is selecting equipment ID, which is why I introduced equipment first. So you're going to need to either enter that equipment ID. So you first need to identify what the equipment is. So if it's a specific physical piece of equipment out in the workshop, you need to know what that is that you're doing maintenance against. Or for example, the other day you were wanting to raise a maintenance job for tendering. So those sort of internal cost center codes are under ZZ. So we made it easy. We put it at the very bottom and we just put it under ZZ. So we call them ZZ codes for short, but effectively you can see the list of them here when you type in ZZ and you click search. Survey jobs and survey billable work, Sapura Energy Australia recharge codes. So for example, Brett in IT, they do a lot of support for Sapura Australia from an IT perspective. So we recharge back to them for those services. SWS, IMPEX projects, the ones that you're probably most keen about are these ones here. So you may have a CapEx job, you may have just some general internal repairs and maintenance work, or the tender one was the one that you were looking at the other day. So let's pretend that we're raising a new tender job. So you just select that. It populates all the data in the gray here. You can select the priority. This is not heavily used, but you know it's worth doing that as we start to use more and more in the system and start to use the data to do things like scheduling or determining job priority. So again, you can set the priority there. Just ignore the project ID areas. I ask you that if you're creating a job and it's to be linked to a project, please send that to our project planners. So that's Andrew Welsh and that's Samuel Johns. They know how to link up a job to a project properly. And they're also responsible for maintaining the work breakdown structure. So if you're needing a new job created, just refer to them. They will ensure that it's linked up properly so that you as a project manager can ensure that you see those job costs properly in your project transaction spreadsheet. So for these fields, you just leave these blank and let them set it up, or let them even create the job new if it's for a project. If you can start a job and then later link it to a project, that's also applicable. Just be wary of the implications of that, you know, what's said of the phase and all those things. I'm sure you're aware. But again, you can, for example, have a job started. It wasn't initially part of the project, but now we want to include this job in the project. Then yes, you can ask the planners to link it retrospectively, and then it will be included in the project costs, as long as, for example, you haven't yet closed it and you haven't yet invoiced against it separately, right? Team. So these are effectively our departments, right? So pick the team that's most relevant to you, for example, mechanical engineering. But again, you know, when you're searching for jobs in the job overview dashboard or the job query dashboard, you can filter by the team. So you can, for example, show me all of the mechanical engineering jobs, and then go from there. If, for example, you don't quite know what the job is, but you know that it belongs to that department. So that's the team. And the planner are people who can maintain jobs. So if your name or somebody's name is not in the list, but they are needing, or they will be a job planner and responsible and fully accountable for the job, you just contact ERP support. We'll add them to the list. But in the meantime, I think you are in here. Yep. So Reza. Order line. So we do use maintenance jobs mainly for mobilization and demobilization from Mark Harris's tools, and they're linked to a sales order, so that when that job is finished, finance knows what sales order it's linked to, and they can take the cost of the job, which currently sits in the maintenance accounts, and then go and invoice the customer for it, right? So this was something that we added in. So just be wary that if your job is linked to a sales order, when you go and close it at the end, you need to tell finance so that they know to take the cost out of the separate part of the system and go and invoice for that, right? It's not Epicor standard workflow. On the other side of stuff, and I'll talk about that, when you ship a manufacturing job, then it's automatically ready for invoicing, and they have you know, that's Epicor standard workflow, so they will see those costs ready to go through and ready for invoicing. Required by date. So always good to set a due date for the job, which is in Epicor called the required by date. Let's say, for example, end of July. Epicor will calculate a start date for the job when you go and schedule it. It will also calculate a due date. Now, the reason this is grayed out is because it is a calculated part of the system, but we don't want to draw too much attention to it because we don't actually use capacity planning in the system right now. At the moment, the resources we use in the system are unlimited, right? So effectively, for a given hydraulics tech, let's say, for example, they can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the system. And it's just unlimited capacity at the moment. So from the start date, if you, for example, put 100 hours of an operation of a given task, that can very well be done in a week. So effectively, between the start and the due date will be you know, 4 days later, right? So that's why the due date is less important than the required by date. So we're paying more attention to the required by date. Later, if we do start to use capacity and the full scheduling suite in Epicor, then this due date will actually start to become more important. And the system will calculate and tell us actually when the job will be finished. So then you can start to look at those values. But in the meantime, just ignore it and look at these dates and update the required by date. Percentage complete. It's mainly used on the project side of stuff to calculate sorry, I forgot the term. To calculate, what's the term at the end? To calculate costs at the end of the project, or projected finishing costs. Just completely lost the term for that. But anyway, so you can you can set a percentage complete for a given manufacturing or maintenance job, and say, well, it's 50% complete in my opinion. That was the date that I made that prediction on, and then project planners can refresh that data and then give a estimated cost of completion. That's the word. Estimated cost of completion on projects. Cool. So the other critical fields, again, you'll notice all the critical fields are highlighted in red, or the critical information. The critical field down there is a bit of a job title or what the issue is. So maintenance jobs are normally raised for an issue against a piece of equipment. Because this is not a piece of equipment, it's a non-equipment, then actually the title might be tender for something, right? But in other cases, it might be broken bracket on something rather, or replace gasket for whatever, right? So these are some examples of titles or issue details against a given piece of equipment. You can also write some general job comments. Oops, sorry. Before I save that, I must pick a topic. Now there are several topics already in the system. It could be CapEx work. It could be internal repairs and maintenance work. Or it could be tenders, for example. This is just a categorization. It just allows us to categorize the jobs, allows us to categorize the issues rather, as well. So later, when we start to work more with the ROVs in the system, as Owen gets through that, you'll be able to look at jobs which are operational planned maintenance or operational unplanned maintenance, for example. So that's just what the topics are, they're categories. So you need to select job title and select the topic, and then you can click save, and now your job has been set and saved. You can set some job comments, or even if you have a proposed resolution, suggested to investigate leaks or whatever, and you can write those in there. They will also appear here on the resolution tab as what you did to the equipment to fix it, or effectively what you did in this job, and then you can write any closeout comments later. I'll just talk about closing it before I move on to the adding operations and materials. So it's 9:30 now, but we'll give it. Are you okay for time, Reza?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, no worries. Well, we just finished this so we can wrap it up in one session. Right, so resolution. So at the end of a job, you can write some closeout comments for the job. Anything which is relevant. Again, it's a required field for closeout. Then you need to click the closeout topic. For a tender job, it would just be tender, but we may add other categories later on. So again, if you feel the need that a job that you're running or you're doing maintenance on a specific piece of equipment and you feel the need that there needs to be a different topic, these ones won't suit, just contact us at ERP and we can add new topics in based on user requirements, right? So we just need to obviously have a bit of a discussion with the required stakeholders of whether that makes sense, but we can always add new topics in. So resolution, this one is a tender job, so you just select tenders. Again, for example, if we're tracking meterage, you can enter the meterage here, but we don't use that at the moment. And then you go and close it. Now, you don't, I've set up I'm in the test system in the test user, so you notice that you don't have access to close a job. I've limited the number of people to close maintenance jobs to a few because of the importance of reviewing the information and also the importance of ensuring finance knows. If you're finding you need to close a lot of maintenance jobs, then we'll review that and we'll give you the training for that. In the meantime, though, you can contact, for example, the project planners. They can close maintenance jobs. You can contact, Mark Harris, Stuart Peary downstairs, or Eva Lynn, which is part of the assets team. They can close maintenance jobs. Or you can send it across to Rachel Tay in finance, and then she can review and close it for you as well. Especially if it is also needing invoicing. So, and especially if it's, for example, like a CapEx, she will manage that part of, she'll manage the CapEx jobs and the CapEx budgets and things like that, because that's part of their monthly reporting. So that's job closing there, which you can hand over to the relevant person. Cool. All right. Right. Should we talk about? Let's talk about engineered and released. Right. So any job, maintenance, production. Maintenance, manufacturing, or project job has this engineered and released button. Engineered means that the materials that you've added to the job can go ahead and be ordered, but only until you release the job will you be able to book timesheet time to it. So if you're still prepping the job and still editing it, just leave these unticked. If you are then ready to order but not ready for people to book time, then you engineer it. That's not a problem. Or if you are ready for everything, people can book time to the job, and materials can be ordered, then you release it. So I'm just going to jump to creating some operations first while we're setting up the job. So I think you've had experience in this, but we'll just quickly go through. So right mouse click, new operation, then select one operation from the list. So for example, we will do a senior mechanical engineer. You can't change this description, but you can change that. You could, for example, say review drawing package, right? And set specific tasks for them. You can give some additional comments and instructions in here, and you must also set an estimate number of hours. Now, you may not know exactly how it is, but again, it's required for you to sort of estimate, right, it's going to be 10 hours. Look, they reached the 10-hour mark on their timesheet, it highlights red, no worries. They feel they need 5 hours more, you come back in here, you add 5 hours more, or you create a new operation and close this one. And that's how you sort of deal with changing estimates of hours. So that's an operation. Now, so that's creating a standard operation. I'll also just introduce you to rework or added operations. So let's say, for example, they've reached the 10 hours here. This person had originally said, yep, it'll take them 10 hours. But now they need an additional double. They need another 10 hours, right? And the reason was because the scope has changed. So then what you want to probably do is complete this operation, and I'll show you how to do that at a separate time. And then you go and create a new operation. Additional hours for review. Client added new scope, and then you say that this has now been added. So an added operation is one which is above or beyond your initial estimates or your initial operations that you set for this job, right? And the reason may be these various reasons, right? So this is a way that we can track quality, we can track scope changes, we can track rework, we can track effectively all things relating to the cost of quality, right? Now, not all of it is a quality issue, not all of it is rework. Some might be due to scheduling, resourcing constraints, or due to client issues. So for example, scope change external indicates that it's a client. The client has changed the scope, and that's why we need additional hours on this job. Scope change internal means, for example, Laz said, well, actually, we need to do this, where initially he thought we didn't need to do it, right? Or the engineer didn't think of something and said, well, actually, yeah, we actually need to do this package of work because it's important to meet the scope, right? It could be originally it's just underestimated, just poor estimating, right? Now that's not a bad thing, right? We get better every single time, but by you categorizing it, you can actually see and learn. And if the job comes up again and you want to copy this job, then you can see, well, actually, I started with 10 hours, I needed 20, so originally I just underestimated, and that's fine. Client damage or misuse, this again is mainly used for MNTs. Like for example, Clint receives a tool back from the client, he's demobbing it, and he realizes that he needs to do extra work and in order to polish it up because, I don't know, the client had damaged a certain aspect of the tool, right? So this just enables us to record the additional time we spent, and then for example, the salesperson can say, well, actually, we got this equipment back and we spent an extra 10 hours. Let's invoice them for it, right? Because they did damage it. So it allows us to categorize that. It could be a resourcing issue. For example, your engineer was taken off onto another job and then they came back. And as you know, startup times are critical. They may start on the project. It's only 5 hours long. And then they were taken off. And when they come back, they need an hour to get their headspace back into it, right? Things like that. So that's resourcing issue or scheduling issue. Again, your whole job might have not been prioritized. And another job has taken priority. And then you've come back onto this job, and then now the job has to be restarted again and re-looked at again, because it's been 2 months already. So these are some. I need to add the estimate. So that's for an added operation. Now, quality can monitor the added operation dashboard for things which are relating to quality issues. And I'll show you where that is as well. You can monitor other things like, underestimates for engineering jobs and other scope changes and things like that. So there's another dashboard which reports on these, on this work. Cool. Adding materials. So you can add materials directly to a job. I will introduce this to you here, but be wary, there's sort of an easy way. So the engineers upstairs, because they don't always use jobs often, ordering materials directly in job entry is a process which takes a little time to learn and understand, and it requires a little bit more rigor about it, right? The alternative to purchasing an item is to use requisition entry, which also adds the materials directly to the job. So that's the way that I suggest the engineers upstairs to order stuff, unless of course they have a specific requirement to do it within the job. I'm going to teach you this anyway, but just beware, I will also teach you how to use a requisition, so it'd be good to know. So, ordering material. Again, if you know the part number, let's take a stab at a part. Grab a ram. Now I know this is probably a manufactured part. Grab a ram piston 36 inch, or it could be purchased as well. This is just an example. It's now related to this operation. So in Epicor, the way things work is you have operations which are tasks, right? And a task is something that a technician or person needs to do. Now, in order to do that task, they often need materials to do that task. They may need certain parts, they may need a gasket, they may need seals, they may have brackets to assemble, things like that. So when you're adding materials, you should relate these materials to a specific operation, because these materials are actually needed for that operation. The reason that's important is because it actually sets the due date for the materials as well. So when the task is due to be performed, the materials need to be ordered and arrive in time before that. So that's why there's this related operation. You set the required quantity. You can manually set the unit cost in USD, but we'll leave that for now. This is mainly used by the project planners when they're, for example, setting material and creating a sub job from it. But effectively, if you're setting an estimated cost, just like you're setting estimated hours, you can set it here in USD. If you're purchasing it direct to a job, when you create the price in, for example, AUD, it will automatically populate this number. So that's why I'll show you this down here for purchasing, and you'll notice that this will automatically update later. Make direct means you're going to make it in a sub job. And then so there's this little asterisk here which says, if your ticket is make direct, please set the sub job budget, or estimate for the sub job rather. Budget is a bit of a loose term above. So you can say, well, I want to make this thing in a sub job and the sub job I'm going to give to Malta, it's going to be $1,000. So you set $1,000 up here, you tick it as make direct, and you say, hey Malta, this job and this material, please go and run a manufacturing job to get it done for me. And then he will go and create a job and link it to this material on this job. And then he will know that the estimate cost for that is $1,000, so he's got $1,000 to do that. So we're still getting better with how we set and communicate budgets throughout Epicor, but this is the beginning stages of it. Purchase direct. So if you are purchasing material to a job directly, that means that it's just for this job. I don't care about any other job. I'm not buying it to inventory and then issuing it to this job. I'm buying it directly to this job. For the most of the things that we order, we buy it directly to the job. That's quite common. And downstairs in production, they buy most things to the job as well. They buy some things to inventory, like raw materials or long lead time items where they haven't yet set up the job structure. They might buy that to inventory first up and then issue it to the job later. So that's the alternative method of how costs and items can get consumed to a job. So you tick purchase direct. There's some basic instructions down here if you ever forget, but effectively you fill in the red fields. So if you're still setting it up, you might want to tick purchase hold and just save that. This prevents, for example, if you need to go get a supplier quote before you fill out the rest of the details, please tick purchase hold. Make sure the job's saved. This would then stop this part number from going into the purchase suggestions in the purchasing department with no costs, with no nothing, because then they'll effectively send you an email and say, hey, do you actually want this to be ordered? There's no cost on it. What do you want to do here? So if you're going and getting a quote, or you're still waiting on information, ticket purchase direct, ticket purchase hold, and just save it. It just holds it and it keeps it clear from purchasing. Later you'll untick this when you're ready to send it to purchasing. Lead time. This is in days. So 5 days is 1 week. 20 days is 4 weeks. Select the supplier. Let's say Intracut. And always make sure this field is filled with PUR. Yeah. You can do some purchasing comments. So this appears on the PO, on the line of the PO. And you can say, please include manual or something like that, or certificate. So this is just a note to the vendor on the PR, on the PO. Then when you got your quote back, you can come back here. You set the expiry of the quote. You notice that it defaults to 30 days. Let's say this one is not 30 days, but 20 days or something like that. You can change the expiry date. You can set the price. Let's say it's $100 AUD. If they gave you a supplier part number, you can type that in there. And the reference might be, it's via email, or you might have a quote number, quote 112585. Then you click this create price list button. Click it only once, and I'll tell you why in a second. Create price list. Cool. Now the price list is successfully created. Now, in order for you to see that and to give you a bit of context, click the Purchase Advisor button. Purchase Advisor is a good interface for you to query purchasing data on a part. So you can, where did that go? Here. You can review, have I purchased it before? No, but if you have, then you'll see the purchase orders down in here. Do you have any currently in order? You'll see the purchase orders here if you do. Do you have any on hand in inventory? If you do, you'll see it here, which warehouse and which bin. Then you just click on this and you'll see the bin and you see how many. We don't really use approved suppliers. Effectively, any supplier that's active in our database is approved. We don't use compliant suppliers or compliant parts at the moment, but what we do use is price list, which is what you just created. So you notice that I've now created a price list. It expires on the date that I set. It has a supplier part number of this. It has a base unit of $100 in the supplier's currency, in AUD. and it has a lead time of 20 days, which I set. Right, so now the price list is set, and that's great. If, for example, you made a mistake and it should be $80, I don't want you to go and edit this number here and then click this again, because this actually adds in a new price list, and it adds in the new price list starting from when the other price list that's currently in there finishes, right? So that it just effectively won't change. Your $80 will only come into effect after the 6th of the 7th, so on the 7th of the 7th, right? So instead you go to edit price list, and then you go here and you go, well, actually this is meant to be $80. And then you go and change it here and click save. So that's how you edit it. You notice here that your $100 has now been converted at today's exchange rate to $65.37 USD. So that's what I said before, that when you're purchasing, you don't need to worry about putting an estimate cost. As long as you click this button, it will then put that estimate cost converted from Australian currency into Epicor's currency, which is USD. And it will put it in there. Right. Now that you are ready to have this job released, you can either click engineered or you can click release straight away, and it ticks both of them. You can't have the job released but not engineered. So once it's released, just go to actions, schedule, job scheduling. You just need to quickly schedule your job just to put it in the system, so that purchasing, so that the system knows that your job is now live and in the system, and it knows to generate purchase suggestions for purchasing. We recommend you forward schedule. So you say, right, I'm going to start it from today. So you tick forward schedule, press OK. And then you'll notice that a start date will populate. So now you'll notice that these materials have come and tick with a red, right? So that means the material is currently not in inventory and hasn't yet been ordered or issued to your job. So it's outstanding effectively. So now you're ready to say, right, any materials that I place on here, I've created a price list, I'm going to take it off of purchase hold, click save, and 3 times a day at 10 o'clock, 12:30 or 3 o'clock, the system runs a process which goes through and searches through all the jobs for any new material demands which don't have this tick on, and then it will go and put this into the purchasing suggestion list, and then the purchase officers will process that within the next 24 hours is sort of their KPI. If you need to expedite it sooner, make sure you do this, and then you just shoot them an email or hit them up on Teams saying this job number and this part, I've just released it, can you please expedite it? And then they will then go manually process this part number and then suck it in so that they can create a PO. So that's just for expediting. Other than that, just leave it for the 3 time slots. So that's 10 o'clock, 12:30 and 3 p.m. And then between those time slots, they will refresh their list and they'll see your part, which is new in that list to process. And that is effectively how you create a maintenance job, create operations, add materials, and get it purchased through the maintenance job. Again, this is something that you need to get used to. It took the production engineers a little bit of time to understand, and a little bit of time to work with purchasing on ensuring that this material demand, it's called, goes through the purchasing suggestions, and they've got tools to manage that and view that. But again, if this process feels a little complex, that's no problem. I'll show you how to raise a requisition, which is much easier. It's almost like an RTP of how we had in the Frankie core system, similar methodology, and it does the same thing. It adds the material to the job. The only reason why production engineers need to order stuff directly to their job is that they have a bill of materials that they're importing from SolidWorks. So they have a full BOM structure, and they will go and set up these items. They've got a separate interface which allows them to do this in a bulk fashion. I can show that to you at a later stage as well, but then allows them to purchase directly from the job in bulk because they have a set bill of materials to order against. Whereas LWI upstairs. You guys might have ad hoc purchases that you need to do. You just add it through a requisition. It's the recommended way, because it's just much simpler and it's much easier to remember and learn, especially if you're not working in the job environment every single day like the production engineers are. Cool.